Welcome to the 2 p.m. session, Securing IoT Systems in the DoD and Beyond. Appreciate everyone taking a little bit of the afternoon out to come hear what we have to say. My name is Mark Romano, Director of Business Development and Strategic Relationships with a company called NYSTEC. We're an IT consulting company based in Rome, New York, across the street from the Air Force Research Laboratory. And we're going to hear today talk to you a little about the Air Force Research Laboratory and their ORION program, which is an Internet of Things program. NYSTEC has offices here in Midtown Manhattan as well as Albany, so we kind of cover the state of New York. And the purpose of this panel is to familiarize yourself with the Air Force Research Laboratory's Information Directorate and some of the work performed there by DoD engineers and independent contractors like AIS and Quanterion Solutions. Our panel members today include Mr. Salvatore Paladino from Assured Information Security. Sal is the Director of Cyber Operations R&D at AIS, located in Rome as well. And Mr. Cully is a Senior Program Manager for Cybersecurity and Intelligence at Quanterion Solutions, located just down the street from Rome in Utica. Examples of some of the work performed at the Air Force Research Laboratory include cyber research, artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, unmanned aerial systems, and many others. There are currently 20 billion IoT devices connected globally. And as the number of IoT systems grows exponentially every year, it has become increasingly difficult for many of the companies that work within the expanding IoT landscape to traverse it effectively and securely. One relevant program that we're here to talk about today is a program called ORION. The ORION program is a technology accelerator and innovation ecosystem aimed at augmenting the DoD's capabilities. So with that introduction, we'll start it with you, Sal. Tell us a little bit about the ORION program and what it's all about.
Thanks, Mark. So ORION is a technology transition and commercial technology accelerator, really designed through a series of activities to increase security, performance, and usability of IoT capabilities prior to their deployment. And in the military, we sometimes use the term IOBT, Internet of Battlefield Things, or IOMT, Internet of Military Things. But we'll talk about that a little more. There's a great deal of overlap between technologies that the DoD is interested in and then technologies in the commercial marketplace. And the real end goal there is to be able to deploy IoT capabilities in their intended operational environment more quickly, at a lower cost, and with additional confidence that they will perform as expected without adverse incident. And we really do that through a series of activities that we bucket into 4 different pillars. One is cyber assurance capabilities, testing, evaluation, and integration activities, increased stakeholder collaboration, and technology transition activities, and enabling tools and technologies that expedite, automate, or enhance some part of the testing process or the commercial acceleration process.
Yep, and yes, from that point of view, Sal is here with AIS, and I am with the Quanterion, and they handle a lot of the portions of the hardening and the red teaming parts of the physical RF and so forth, whereas Quanterion does more of the data backend, both from the functionality standpoint, getting the data processing you need to get from data to decisions, but also making sure that that's secure, and that's where we overlap. This functionality and security testing environment, we're both doing the testing and evaluation, only from different sides. Go ahead.
So, you know, we're here at the Smart Cities Expo. Why is this relevant to this audience? What's so important about the work that the AFRL is doing that you guys are supporting that is relevant here?
So there's, again, a very significant overlap between IOBT, IOMT, and IoT in general, right? The DoD is a large consumer of commercial capability. And if you look at fields like transportation, in particular, network connectivity, and some others, that overlap is very profound. So odds are that a device that some commercial company cares about and wants secure, the DoD has a similar interest. And so what we're really able to do in the ORION environment, things like functional testing, right? Make sure some system or component does what the vendor says it does, right? And offer an independent test, validating that, right? We have more adversarial testing, where you're doing vulnerability discovery, vulnerability assessment, more open-ended things like penetration testing and red teaming, right? Testing the attack surface of a particular IoT device or the devices with which it will interface, right? In the military, we use a term called OPFOR, oppositional force emulation, where you might emulate a group of hackers, right? If you have a device that you're trying to protect, you can perform exercises that we call red team, blue team, right? Some adversarial force trying to compromise your system, and some group of your folks or some third party that you've hired out for security trying to protect that system. So it's experimental. It's all types of emulation, creating custom environments, bespoke testing environments. Sometimes in the military we have austere environments where you have very rigid constraints, and you might have trouble finding a third-party tester that can simulate those type of constraints. But for those of us working in the DoD, that's very common.
When you say austere, are you talking about like sort of desert environments or extreme cold?
It could be limited comms. It could be environmental challenges like you're talking about. It could be limitations on size and power, form factor. It could be testing the ruggedization of a particular component.
But about like a dense urban environment like New York City?
Exactly. So one of the biggest challenges people have is testing their RF anything with an RF sensor and some emitter, right? Finding a testing space that basically has a clean RF footprint. So absolutely, that would be a challenge.
Cully, what do you have to add on that?
Sal covered that very well as to what we do technically and what we technically offer. I'll talk a little bit more too, and I'd love to hear from you as well. What kind of things, as a smart city practitioner, stakeholder leadership need? What we're imagining on this end is that you have a particular need based on what we've seen in a lot of these panels today, where a city's constituents really needs X, Y, or Z services. In order to do that you need a certain amount of functionality, but you also need a certain amount of security. And security can range everything from not getting hacked into to getting damaging government systems to possibly compromising data, privacy data, and all those things that are involved. So we can work with cities to think through that thing from end to end. So, and also bring in the vendors that are involved and think about how the data, first of all, what data do you really need to solve the problem? And critical thinking is super important. We all got it in class when we were students, critical thinking course. The first thing you do is you define the problem. And I still sometimes want to rush out at my age and still want to rush and solve the problem. But the key part is that really what problem are we trying to solve? And you might even need more information before you know what problem you're trying to solve, really trying to solve. Once you do that, then you say, what kind of information am I going to need to solve this problem? And then from there, you can start saying, well, how am I going to get that information? Is that going to be through a database? Is that going to be through actually employing sensors in traffic or weather, or you name the sensor? And all that together, and of course, thinking about it security-wise. And the last part, you want to think about it as a city of data life cycle. This data has a life cycle where you've taken it and you've collected it for a certain purpose, but it could be reused later on as more operational data or maybe more statistical long-term looks at things. And there's certain things like you can do such as anonymization and other types of things that will, early on, that will allow you to still maintain the usefulness of the data, but help you lower liabilities in terms of privacy data and things of that nature. So we also think through that, but bottom line, it starts with what do the constituents need, getting that, defining the problem, getting the information, and make sure it's doing what you need it to do, both now and the future, and in a secure way.
So you both have already sort of alluded to a little bit of this, but what type of systems is ORION testing? Some examples.
Really anything and everything IoT, right? Could be communication systems, cellular components. We've done satellite equipment, gateways, modems, transportation sensors, components that are found in SCADA and ICS systems like actuators and things of that nature. Starlink related capabilities. And then you look at more purely military things like an avionics system of a military aircraft, but you can also do an avionics system of a commercial aircraft. So there really is
a lot of civilian overlap. Yeah.
absolutely, and I said it, particularly in energy infrastructure. Have every military base on Earth connected to a civilian power grid, right, in some way, shape, or form. You have transportation technology, software-defined radios. It seems as though that overlap grows every day.
Yeah, and I can imagine with 20 billion devices and counting, there's a lot of things that you guys can play around with. What kind of tools and methodologies do you guys use in the Orion lab that help solve these problems?
So overall, we have ability to be able to understand the network. So a lot of network tools to be able, networks can go from your average business IT network like we see in our offices to we actually have a truck that has about 5 different networks on board, from fleet management to engine control and everything in between. And these operate on standard like OEM type protocols and environments. So we have to be up on not only things in the business side of it, but we have to be up on things that are in the car industry and so forth. We have to be able to understand those protocols, and we have to understand how to secure them. So we are able to do that through what we do.
Sal, anything to add on that?
So there's a great deal of tooling that is very customized, and most of it is geared toward just in some way enhancing or expediting the testing process. So it could be digital transformation capabilities, so more quickly create a digital twin. Maybe there's an IoT component with a big form factor that you just can't transport, so we're able to create digital twins of those capabilities in some cases. Capabilities to automate things like software code analysis, things to provision networks or custom environments more quickly and tear down those environments more quickly, and in some cases reset those environments because during some part of the testing you've introduced some characteristic that you no longer want.
That's a good one. Can I talk real quickly of that? We do the cloud side of things, and it's super important to have, not only do you have to have all those technologies to be able to help both from the functionality and the security, but now you think about taking in customers. So each customer has to have their own account. Those accounts have to be set and make sure that their data stays safe and separate from everyone else's. And those environments that we are building environments so that much like where we can rapidly build them up and they can work, they can develop and test in those environments, but we could also rapidly tear them down and we can go on to the next customer. So the idea is the virtual dynamic in terms of building those test environments quickly, but also making sure you're keeping the individual customer's data safe.
So there's probably some non-technical folks that are here, me one of them. Could you explain what a digital twin is?
So a digital twin is essentially all the computing resources associated with some device, but without the form factor. So, for instance, you could replicate the entire avionics system of an aircraft and put it in something that looks the size of like a wheelbarrow, right? We wouldn't use a wheelbarrow, but you get the picture. And all the interfaces would be the same, the computing capabilities would be the same, but it's easier to test on that device than it would be to fly an aircraft in, roll it into a space, pay for the entire space to have that aircraft sit there. And here's what the vendors really don't like. Now their capability is unusable for the entire time we're testing it. So the digital twin provides for cost savings there as well.
Interesting. Yep. So almost like a simulator, so to speak, right?
Yep.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
an emulated version
Yeah.
of the computing capability for that specific device.
Right. Large companies have been using it for years because it's been like any other technology. A lot of times it's expensive early on, but companies that build aircraft engines and aircraft have been able to gather all those parameters like Sal was talking about, and be able to bring these in. So that used to be kind of in the old days, if you will, you had to build clay models. You had to maybe build something to a certain amount and then test it. The idea is that before you start bending metal, you can actually do a lot of software designs and maybe get through a lot of that initial development quickly and getting to viable things that then you can go test with real models and prototypes.
Yeah, that's great. So the Orion program, the AFRL Orion program, is looking for companies, right, to sort of participate. What types of companies is Orion looking for?
So really, you could be a commercial company, right? So many of the folks working in the Orion space are doing purely commercial pen testing and red teaming. So we are able to just test purely commercial capabilities. If you're someone who's developed a commercial IoT device and you believe it has a military use case, we can, possibly explore that. And if you're a DoD contractor or DoD vendor now, then there's a decent chance that, and if the Air Force cares about what you're doing, there's a decent chance you might be able to use the Orion environment at a drastically reduced cost as well. So really anyone that wants to secure their IoT capabilities, and I would say that if there's one differentiator, that if you look at the hacker subculture in the mid-2000s, right, you'd get these really, they almost competed for who could write these really scathing and sarcastic lists of recommendations about why your technology doesn't work, right? And I even, years ago, I used this example, the red team said, hire developers that don't suck. And I'm like, that's not a actionable recommendation. So what you're going to get with Orion is a very actionable, very achievable pathway to remediate all of the defects and flaws and deficiencies that have been found with your capability.
Yeah, and that's key because we want to make sure that you're getting what you need for the price you're paying. And obviously, the whole idea behind this is to be able to make sure that make it as secure as possible. We know that there's never 100% security, but if you start with some key fundamentals and then you run it against every possible scenario that we have, and there's very much a lot of the scenarios that they do are very much red teaming, adversary related in terms of you're thinking about it from the threat point of view. There's a certain, we've worked a lot in compliance and cybersecurity, and just a quick one, their compliance is the bare minimum. That's what we call cyber hygiene. It just gets you that being the lowest hanging fruit, and that's the bare minimum for a lot of operations in the military as well as in finance now in the state of New York and other things. But if you bring in the other part of it, it's what they call threat-based cybersecurity, where you're actually thinking about it from a hacker's point of view, and you're thinking through it there, what they call their kill chain, from deciding to do it to figuring out how they're going to get in, how they're going to stay in, and how they're going to make effects like steal your money, steal your data. And so when you're thinking like that, you have a much better ability to secure those systems, and you have a much better ability to provide the mediation to go with it.
So I think we just got another minute or two left. So the final question is, so how do companies get involved? What do they have to do if they're interested in working with the AFRL and the Orion program?
It's we have a website, Orion Assured. We can set it up on the way, but it's the word Orion, like the star system, Assured, all one word, .com. Please check that out. There's contact ability there. If you want to get with one of us offline here, we can certainly talk to you all as well. Anything to add, Sal?
No, that's it. One place to go to make it easier. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. If you have any detailed questions for the two smart folks up here, feel free to hit them up after the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.